this is going to be my review of A Few Good Men. And I loved it. I thought this film was very clever with how Tom Cruise was able to, again, make the case that these two boys were, pretty innocent, or not pretty. Obviously, at the end of the day, they still had to, face charges, but that there was more involved to that, and I think I really enjoyed it. I think was these little clever nuances and subtleties, like him getting the one of the biggest things that stick in my mind is him getting the bat and seeing closet full of clothes and reminding him how Santiago's closet was full of clothes, despite the fact that he was supposed to leave in a couple of hours. On top of the phone book, and and how Santiago didn't make any calls, and yet the Colonel Nathan did. And I think it's these little subtleties of, he had breathing conditions, so it might not have been poison, or and that makes sense because he was lacking behind, and it's these little subtle things. And I think another thing is Jack Nicholson, or uh, was barely in the film. He had like 3 scenes, but the courtroom scene with him made a huge impression. Huge impression with. Do you want the answer? No, I want the truth. You can't handle the truth. I can't do a great Jack Jack Nicholson impersonation, but again, that whole scene, which was probably like 20 minutes long, was so great because of how clever it was, and because of of Tom Cruise being able to prove their innocence, on top of the great performances by Tom and Jack in that scene, as well as even the judge and Santiago. By the way, Santiago, same thing. Barely in the film, but great. Stand out with his, he really has that military presence to him. So again, I love how the best scenes are in the courtroom, but also some of the best scenes are just Tom Cruise figuring out the cases and really thinking logically. But I also love because I think the courtroom scenes always bring out the best of what I love about the film. It's clever, in how the whole story came to be about the whole thing, and as well as the great performances by Tom Cruise and the other attorney and the judge, and then ultimately all the witnesses, and Santiago and all that stuff, and Dawson, not Dawson, it was not Santiago, sorry, Dawson and Downey, and that type of stuff. So I think those courtroom scenes definitely bring out the best in the film. I think the dialogue was good again, but I still can't get over how quick it goes. Like, eventually you get used to it, but it almost felt like it was sped up. Then you realize, oh yeah, the person, this great screenwriter always makes quick dialogue. So it's like, okay, but quickly it kind of got my brain to realize, think fast. But you were so engaged with the dialogue, anyways, with its cleverness. I think that's the strongest thing. Its cleverness. And I love how it explores, sides of military that you don't really see with the JAG Corps, and in different court systems within the military. And again, so I really enjoyed this film. I think the second half is, I contend, to be exponentially better than the first half because it dives into more of Tom Cruise and the other cast and people learning about really, getting more of the full picture of the story along with the courtroom stuff with the different witnesses and the lawyers. But I think the first half, what's good about the first half is it sets up the second half very nicely, where someone tells them the full picture, but figure out that there's more truth to it. I love the different layers of, he was supposed to come home. People said not to touch him, but then why was he touched? Then who gave you the order? Then how did he know? Then how come nobody else know? Then how come the flight never took off? And how come, the closet was full, and this and that, and how the first half, I think, sets up the second half. But again, also those different layers. And what I love about a good courtroom drama or any mystery type film is how the little details, how the little details end up paying off in dividends towards the end of the film, and that was done great. So it's like this film can have everything you want from a type of film where it's like a court case, drama, where it has the great performances, it has the great dialogue and the iconic dialogue throughout, and I love, where it's like you can understand where everybody's coming from, including Colonel Nathan, because you can understand, yeah, I can totally understand. Santiago was a liability, and, we didn't know he was going to die. And I love, like, the honest truth of, yeah, you still killed him, in terms of Dawson and Downey. It still was not that complete happy ending that it would ever be, and you could tell the horror on their face, and again, because of the performances, it really sells Tom Cruise's passion and the other lawyers' passion, and Dawson's passion to get back out there, and and Joanne was a good character as well, kind of being that, kind of being a person to push, Danny, Tom Cruise's character, in some ways back in line. So that was a really good stuff, all around. So I really enjoyed this film. I think, again, the dialogue you kind of had to start to use to pretty quickly. You had, at the beginning I was like, oh, that's way too fast, but then eventually you're like, okay, I get used to that pretty quickly. And then the stuff with the second half is a lot better than the first half, I think, just because I think the first half I felt like was very much setting the groundwork for the second half, when in the terms of the courtroom stuff, and then really starting to solve the case and learn all the people involved. But I still overall love the film, so don't get mistaken by that. Stay tuned for videos coming at you.